You're listening to the Mommy Labor Nurse podcast, where you'll gain the tools, knowledge, and confidence you need to erase the unknowns, feel in control, and have an even better birth no matter how you deliver. My name is Liesel Teen, mom of two, practicing labor and delivery nurse, and your host. From over 8 years and counting of working at the bedside, I know that knowledge is the key to an even better birth. So tune in each week to learn about all things pregnancy, birth, and postpartum from me, a labor and delivery nurse that's seen it all. And now let's get into this week's episode. Happy Monday, you guys. We're doing something a little different this week and for the next 12 weeks. If you can tell by the title of this episode, I'm starting this little series called the 12 Days of Birth. You know, like the 12 Days of Christmas. Let's sing the song together. On the first day of Christmas, my true love gave to me, blah, 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 right? We all know that song. Well, this is the 12 Days of Birth. So it's on the first day of labor, Liesel gave to me, and then I'm going to give you an episode. So it's a little goofy. I'm sorry. You know, you guys know me. But basically, I wanted to put out 12 episodes of my favorite episodes over the next 12 weeks that I know you guys are going to love. And I just feel like we have so many great podcast episodes that podcasts are so hard to search for within like Apple or Spotify or wherever you listen to them. And it's so hard to access like some of the really good podcast episodes. So I wanted to do a 12-week series on my favorite podcast episodes thus far since the beginning of when I started the podcast. So this week I have a car baby birth story. It's fun. I'm not going to give you a whole lot of details, but basically there was a baby that was born in a car. And I'm rhyming this one because, you know, a partridge in a pear tree, a car baby birth story, right? It rhymes. We like it. Okay, we're cute. Anyways, let's get into this week's episode. Hi, Tess. Welcome to the Mommy Labor Nurse podcast. Thank you so much for being here today.
Of course. Thanks for having me. I'm excited.
Yeah. Can you start by telling our listeners a little bit about yourself and what you do, where you're from? I guess you can tell our listeners how we know each other, because we know each other in real life.
Yeah.
So yeah, go ahead and introduce yourself.
Okay. I'm Tess and I'm from Wake Forest, North Carolina. I was a teacher for 10 years. I taught fourth grade math mostly.
Really?
And
see, I didn't know you were a math teacher. That's cool. That's cool. I knew you were a teacher. I just didn't know what you taught.
Yeah, I taught fourth grade math for 10 years, stuck with the same grade level all 10 years, which is pretty rare.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I ended my teaching career with like COVID. I was planning on staying home anyway with my two babies. And then it just so happened and I ended with COVID. So I taught from home the last few months. And then, so I've been home officially over a year now with my kids. So I figured, we'd have another baby and just really make it crazy.
Why not add to the mix?
Yeah. Why not just throw another one in there? So yeah. And we know each other because, of our friend Tara and I went to high school together. And so she brought us together. So
yeah. So Tara's might be listening. Hi, Tara. So yeah, Tara and I worked at a restaurant in North Raleigh. So that's how Tara and I know each other. And then you guys went to high school.
And college together.
And we just, we went to the same parties. We hung out at the same.
Yeah, everything, all like the family events and get-togethers. Now, party before, and then now we're doing like baby showers and kids' birthday parties.
Exactly. All life.
Yeah,
How it
changes, 20s to our 30s.
I know. All right, cool. Well, we are going to do a birth story today, guys. I asked Tess to come on the podcast today because she has some very interesting, or I thought, and very interesting birth stories. So as you heard, she's got 3 children. So we're going to hear 3 very different births. So Tess, what I do is I have people start at the beginning and talk about your first one, your first pregnancy. If you had any losses, you're welcome to share if you had any losses before that. If not, we'll talk about your first pregnancy and how that was, and then that birth, and then we can get into the next 2.
Okay. Sounds good. All right. Well, I'll get started. So I did have one pregnancy that I did lose around 9 weeks. It didn't register a miscarriage till about like 10 or 11. I went in for an appointment. After that, my hormones were all crazy and I had trouble getting pregnant the next time. So we ended up going to fertility. We only had to get on like a medicine, letrozole, to make me ovulate. So I got pregnant with Juliet on that first go around. Pregnancy was awesome. I felt amazing. I was like, what are people complaining about being pregnant? I was made for this. It was awesome.
We were like tubing and you were like pregnant, like chilling. Like it was great.
Yeah. Everybody was like on the tube. Yeah. And everybody's like drinking and I'm just sitting there with my big belly. Like, I think I was like 32 weeks pregnant going down this river.
That was fun. Yeah.
That was fun. I've totally forgot about that. Yeah. But I really remember feeling like, I feel like I should be on the raft with Liesel just in case something does happen. Like, she can help me on this river. But yeah, so that pregnancy was great. My water broke at home. I had no contractions or anything. I went to lay down in bed and it was the day before my due date and my water broke laying down in bed. And it was like the movies, like
really
a complete gush. Like, and I swear I heard it pop. Like I heard my water pop.
I can't tell you how many people say that. Like that is, it's like a balloon. Like you hear popping.
Yeah. Yeah. Like just a pop. It was unreal. And it was the complete gush. And so, I yelled for my husband to come help me. And he's like, what do I do? I was like, give me a towel. Like, because this is going to get everywhere once I stand up. So we went to the hospital and contraction started like an hour later. When I was like in the triage, a woman came in like screaming. And I remember thinking like, what's that sound? And it was a woman delivering. And I swear that's what triggered my labor to start because I heard her.
Oh,
and like, because I had nothing until I heard her and I remember being like, oh my God, make it stop, make it stop, make it stop. And it was my first pregnancy. Cause I'm sitting there thinking like, oh, here's a little contraction. Oh, this is fun. And then I heard her and I was like, oh God, and I know she was just terrified because she's getting wheeled in, which, eventually that was my story. So
we'll get into that. Don't spoil it.
But So with Juliet, it was pretty easy. Pretty painful. I think she was like sunny side up. I had like back labor.
Oh, yeah.
But I definitely got an epidural and I had to push for 2 hours with her and we finally came. So it was a total of like 9 hours, like between my water breaking and her being in my arms, it was 9 hours, which was pretty quick.
Yeah. That's not bad.
Not too bad. So my second, I told all that to my OB, and she was like, wow, like usually any delivery that's under 12 hours is usually pretty quick. So she said, your next delivery is probably going to be even faster. Yeah. She's like, so just be aware of that. And I was like, okay. And then when it got closer, when we were doing like cervical checks and everything, she was like, hey, I don't want you to wait till 5 minutes. Contractions getting 5 minutes apart. I want you to come to the hospital at 7 minutes apart. She said, and if your water breaks, you need to get in the car immediately and
go right now.
Go. She was like, because he's right there. And she said, I don't want you delivering a baby on the side of the road. Literally told me that. So I went home and I told my husband, I was like, gosh, she kind of freaked me out a little bit because she acts like
yeah. And so when she was telling you this, first of all, how far apart are Juliet and then your son?
James? They are 18 months apart, almost to the day.
Okay. So you got pregnant
exactly 9 months later.
9 months. Okay. Gotcha. Gotcha.
9 months later.
I couldn't exactly remember. So you got pregnant at 9 months. And then before we get into the car, how was that pregnancy in comparison to Juliet's pregnancy?
So really, really easy. Again, like not too bad. I had some like pelvic pain, like towards the end, where I couldn't stand on like one foot to get dressed. But I figured, oh, that's just normal. Like whatever, my hips and everything would like pop down there. Everything was just really achy. But again, like super easy. Like I've never really had morning sickness, never had major issues, nothing. So super, super easy. So again, still at this point, still loving being pregnant, loving it. Like, was like, let's have a whole bunch.
Yeah.
And so then, so when she told me that, when the OB told me that, I was like a little nervous, but like, okay, I'll get to the hospital.
Do you remember how dilated you were? Did she give you a number or did she just say he was low?
Yeah, I was always 2. Like every time I went in, I was always 2 centimeters.
Yeah.
And then like only like 50% effaced.
Yeah.
So she was just like, hey, but he's right there. Like, just be ready. He's right there if your water breaks. I was like, okay.
Gotcha.
And I remember her pointing up, like he's right there. I was like, okay.
Yeah.
So, that morning I remember it was achy because again, my hips and everything had been hurting. And so that morning my back hurt and I was like, okay, well, I just slept funny and I'm pregnant. This is the day before my due date, or this is the day of my due date, excuse me, the day of
Yeah.
my due date. And I was like, okay, I'm just achy, like whatever. I
Yeah.
did get in the bathtub. Remember I got in the bathtub because my back was hurting, but it was just this really small section in my lower back. Like it was just my spine, like right on my spine. And it just ached. I wasn't in pain. It just ached and it would kind of come and go. But it was nothing I could really track. And so when I was trying to track it to be like, is this anything? Like, yeah, it does go away and it is coming back. It wasn't consistent. So it would be like 9 minutes apart and then 20 minutes apart. And then of course, remember I had an 18-month-old. So I'm like busy with her and my father-in-law happened to be over. So I'm kind of like all over the place during the day. I went and picked up my groceries. I had grocery pickup, went and drove and picked up my groceries, but I still had this just like nagging pain in my back, but nothing debilitating, nothing like contractions like how I had with my first. So I just kind of was like, okay. And my husband kept checking on me. He's like, are you okay? Are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, it's just a little achy. I'm okay. I'm all right.
So at this point, did you think this was labor at all?
No,
Okay.
no. And I know it sounds crazy. I know probably people think I'm nuts, but I swear I did not know that was labor. I did not know. I was expecting something consistent because the OB always tells you like contractions that are 5-7 minutes apart consistently for an hour and intensifying in pain. I had none of that. Absolutely none of that. And again, I'm like trying to time them all day. So I'm like, this is just, and again, it's only my back, nothing in the front, like how I felt with my first. Like I didn't feel any contractions in the front at all. So, but I remember my mother-in-law happened to come over and she like put a heating pad on my back. And I remember getting nervous. My mom was like, Tess, like you might be in labor. I called my grandma, just chit-chatting with her. And she's like, Tess, I think you might be in labor. And I was like, no, like this isn't
You're the only one in denial.
Yeah.
Everybody else is like, hello.
Like, hey, you might be in labor. You might need to call. And I was like, but I'm waiting for what the doctor told me to feel. And this is my second kid. I should know.
You would think. Yeah, you would think. It's usually the opposite of where it's your first baby and you're like, is this what's going on? I'm not really sure. Because I say this all the time. I say, usually when you're not in labor, you think you might be in labor. You're thinking, is this labor? But then when you're actually in labor, you don't really question it. And you, my friend, are the 0.1% of people. Why I put the disclaimer, why I say most people know that they're in labor.
So when I was having my third, the doctor's like, you'll know. And I'm like, no, sir, I don't know. I need you to understand.
Let me correct you.
So they kept telling me, so I'm like sitting there and I'm like, because with my daughter, my water broke. I had no contraction, my water broke. So I knew to go in. So I was like, okay, this is great. So I was like, all right. And again, I'm walking and sitting on the floor, hanging out with my toddler. Well, it finally gets to the point and I'm timing them and it's like 7 minutes, 6 minutes, 10 minutes, 4 minutes. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to call my doctor. I'm going to call my doctor. And this is a Saturday. So I called the doctor and they transfer me. It's a long story. They transferred me to the hospital. They actually transferred me to the hospital and not like a nurse. Like they give me a phone number to call. And the nurse on the phone, she's like, you need to call your OB. You can't call me. You call the hospital. And I was like, this is the number they gave me to call. Like the lady on the phone so she was like, and I was like, I cannot give you medical advice. I was like, can you please just tell me if this little back pain that I'm feeling that's coming and going, is that considered labor? Is this considered labor? And she was like, yes, that's considered labor. And I was like, oh no,
I'm too late. Yeah.
No, because that last one was 4 minutes. And I was like, oh no, like, because it was definitely getting closer. It was still sporadic, but they were definitely getting closer together. And she was like, I'm going to have the doctor call you back. I was like, okay.
All right, the sound of that heartbeat means it's time for this week's segment of Birth It Up Babies. This one says, hi, Liesel. I just wanted to say thank you for all the information you share. I just had my second baby on the 4th of July. Oh, happy 4th of July. He decided to come super fast, and I went from 2 centimeters to 10 centimeters in just 20 minutes. It was seriously the most intense 20 minutes of my life, LOL. I had planned on an epidural, but because things went so quickly, I could not get one. Thankfully, I took your natural birth course to prep so I could manage my pain naturally for as long as I could. I definitely had a few contractions where I panicked because I couldn't get the epidural and it was so painful, but I reminded myself to focus on the breathing techniques you taught and that I can do anything for 20 seconds. Good girl. That is what I'm talking about. It really helped calm me down and focus on baby. So thank you. I recommend you to all my prego friends. Oh. If you want to have an even better if you want to have an even better birth, just like this mama, head on over to mommylabornurse.com/courses to learn more about our 3 online on-demand birth classes.
So I'm waiting and I'm on the phone with my mom. And she's like, I don't think you should wait for the doctor to call you back. I think you just need to go. And this is like 2 minutes after I was told that this is actually labor. So now I'm talking to my mom. She's like, you just need to go. That moment, I had my very first contraction in the front, like what I was waiting for, I guess. And it brought me down to my knees. And I was like, Mom, I got to go. And I hung up the phone and I got on my knees and my water broke. And then, so now I'm like, oh God, she told me if my water breaks, get in the car immediately. So I get my husband. Thank God my father-in-law was here to watch my 18-month-old.
Yeah.
Because she would have been in the
You
car.
would have had him at home.
Oh yeah. Or she would have been in the car with us. And God,
that's,
Lord knows, like she still probably wouldn't want to get into a car. So we got in the car and contraction started immediately, unlike with my daughter. So I was like, could barely get in the car. And the doctor called me back when I was in the car pulling out of the driveway. And he was like, okay, well, and I could barely say my name. I couldn't talk. I could not talk. Could not. And he kind of giggled at me. And I was like, cause I was trying to tell him my name and, to tell him who I was. And, and he kind of giggled at me and, he was like, how far away are you? And I looked at the GPS and it said 28 minutes. And I was like, oh my God, I was like 28 minutes. He goes, okay, I'll see you soon. And I was like, all right. So I hung up the phone and we're pulling out of my neighborhood and I'm like in agonizing pain, horrible. And I'm like hitting the window. I don't want to scare people that are listening, but
it's okay. It's okay. We're real on this podcast. It's okay.
It was horrible. Like expecting mom's like, I don't want to scare you, but it was, and also it was something I wasn't anticipating. So you have to remember, like, I'm not anticipating this pain. It went from 0 to 100.
Right.
Like,
and there's all this fear too, you know, you're like, oh crap, my water just broke. Oh crap, this is actually labor. So it's like fear setting in too. So it's like super, super intense. I'm sure.
When that lady told me, yes, this is considered labor, it was 3-4 minutes later, my water broke. So so I'm like panicking. So I'm like, oh, good God, if this is labor, I'm too late. I'm beyond 7 minutes. Again, still sporadic, but like, this is labor. I should have gone hours ago. Yeah. So so we're getting in the car, and we're driving and James, my husband's like, it's okay. It's okay. Like, we're going to get there. It's going to be fine. And I said, I'm not going to make it for an epidural. And I was like, oh my God, I'm not gonna make for an epidural. Yeah. And he was like, it's okay. We're going to make it. We're going to make it. It's going to be fine. And so we got like another few 100 yards of the road. And, he's like, and I'm like, go to North, like, you got to go to North, like the Wake Med North. You got to go to North because they're not going to make
like
it.
The closer hospital.
Yeah. To go to the closer hospital. So that hospital was like 10 minutes away.
Okay.
But I wasn't supposed to deliver there. I was supposed to deliver at this one over here, 30 minutes away.
Yeah.
And I was like, go to North. Like, and he goes, where is it? And I was like, oh my God, we drive by this hospital every day. We drive by this hospital every day. And so he was just panicking, like, and he was like, do I need to run this light? And I was like, yes. So he like hops medians. Mind you, this is 2:30 in the afternoon on a Saturday, like crossing over like really busy streets. Like, so I was like, oh God, I was like, yes, go. You have to go. And I'm like screaming in this car because the pain is just horrific and I'm terrified. And again, we're maybe 2 miles, 3 miles from the house. And I start feeling like I'm pooping on myself. Like I start feeling like, and I remember from talking to you and talking to Tiffany and Tara, like that's the last thing that happens before baby comes.
It's in the way and it gets out of the way and then something else comes out. Yeah.
Yep. So I remember, and I was like, super embarrassed because my husband and I have been together for 10 years. And I'm like, I don't.
Yeah.
go to the bathroom in front of him and all that kind of stuff.
Well,
So
I mean, I feel like that's fairly, I mean, I can't say I would feel comfortable pooping right next to my husband, like in the car,
in the car, in my pants,
in your pants. Right. I think everyone would agree with you on that that's not something
like,
that, after 10 years of marriage, anybody would feel comfortable with.
I never imagined that we would have to go through this like together.
No, there's no class that can prepare you for that.
Let me poop in my pants next to you. So I'm like, even though I'm like, oh, this pain, I'm thinking, oh my God, I'm so embarrassed. I can't tell him that I'm pooping on myself right now. Like I can't tell him this, but then I was like, I have to tell him because it's just happening. And completely just happening. It was unreal. The craziest feeling ever. Yeah. And I was like, I'm pooping on myself. And he was like, I don't give a F. I mean, he was flying down the road, like going 90 miles an hour, flying down the road. We're going through a neighborhood to like get there faster to kind of avoid lights. Yeah. And so I'm like sitting there panicking because I'm like, this is it. Like, this is the last thing that happens before baby comes out. Like I'm going to have this baby. So he was like, do we need to call 911? Do we need to call 911? And I said, just drive, just keep going. Like, we can't stop for an ambulance. Like, just keep going. Yeah. He's like, I'm going to call and just tell them to tell the hospital that we're on the way. Yeah. So he gets on the phone and it's Bluetooth. And he's like, we're coming in hot. My wife's having a baby. We're coming in with fire. And I was like, oh my God, like he's wigging out over there. And he was like, can you tell the hospital that we're on the way? And she was like, I'm sorry, sir. We can't do that, but I can get an ambulance for you. And she was like, you want an ambulance? And he was like, no, I just want to tell them that we're on the way. And she was like, and she could hear me because I'm on Bluetooth. So she can hear me and I can tell she got a little panicky and she goes, hold on, sir. And then all of a sudden she transfers us. She does transfer us. I don't know why she told us she couldn't. So she did transfer us. And we hear like, Wake Med North emergency. How can I help you? And my husband's like telling them, like, starts immediately just like yelling.
Word vomit. Yeah.
Right. And she's like, hello. I tried calling back. And like, so she couldn't hear us. And my husband looks at me and he's like, did you get the number? Did you get the number? And I'm like, did I get the number? Like, oh no, no, I'm having a baby. No, I'm screaming right now. No, I did not get the number. So by this point, we're like right up the road from the hospital. So now it's like, well, we're going. And then, all of a sudden I start feeling that ring of fire. Yeah. That ring of fire is very real. It is. And I had just read about it. I remember like a couple weeks prior, like, I didn't even know that's what it was called, but like, I had just read about it and I was like, that ring of fire. So once I felt that, I lost it screaming. And I was like, he's coming out. And my husband's like, take your pants off. And I was like, no, I don't want to. Like, cause then I felt
still in denial. Yeah.
Right. Denial. Like then he's really going to come. That means it's real. That means it's real. So he's driving down the median. This is Falls and News, by the way. So I don't know if you know where Falls and News is, like in Durant. So like, it's a 2-lane road, like I guess, and there's a median in the middle. So 4 lanes and there's a median in the middle. And he's driving up that median going like 90 miles an hour and like laying on the horn and trying to get my pants off me. So like, it's just great. Very unsafe. His whole head just came out. His whole head just popped right out. And I didn't push. I didn't do anything. He just came out. And so my husband is turning into the ER and my son's whole head is out. And people always ask, was he looking at you? No, he was looking to the side. Okay. Nice. So my husband misses the turn to pull in front of the ER. And so my husband looks down, I think for the first time, and sees our son's head out completely. Yeah. And he's like, my husband goes, pull him out, like in the softest little like voice ever. He's like, pull him out. And I said, just effing drive, like go. Like I can't pull him out. And so just go. So he runs inside, he pulls in the front, lays on the horn, runs inside screaming. And I'm in the front seat and a security guard comes out first. And I see him putting gloves on and they open the door and he yells, push, which I did not push. Again, I did not, my body just took over, completely took over, which is amazing, by the way, that your body can just do it. Yeah. So the security guard is an off-duty police officer. He caught him. He caught the baby. And then an ER nurse came running out to help. And my son wasn't breathing. So he was completely like gray, blue, like a rag doll. His mouth was open. And I can remember they kind of propped him up so I could see him. Yeah. And he was just, his arms were limp and like laying back and just totally opposite of my daughter. My first, she was pink and screaming and this beautiful red baby. Yeah. And then he was just gray. And so this ER nurse took over and started like giving him like breaths of air and compressions. He had no equipment, no nothing.
Wow.
He just took over. And I remember just saying like, breathe, baby, breathe, baby, breathe, baby, breathe, baby, like over and over and over. Makes me want to cry. Oh,
Yeah.
and so, and I remember the nurse, he was screaming for a crash cart and he was screaming for a bag. He kept saying, I need a bag, which I'm guessing like an ambu bag or something.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he was screaming for that. And in between like his breaths of air and compressions. And then he finally, I remember he yelled, I need an effing bag, and screamed it. And so my husband is like running back inside, like trying to like get more
He's
people
like, I'll get
out
the
there.
bag. Come
Like,
on.
he's like,
Yeah.
I'll do it, whatever I need to do. And by then people come pouring out of the hospital. By the time the nurse got him breathing, like you could finally hear this little whimper on my son. And then people are like pouring out of the hospital. And so once I got the bag on him and everything and got him breathing, by that point, I start like hyperventilating, like full blown hyperventilating. So by that point, my vision was like all over the place. It was like just scattered all over. And I was like hyperventilating. And I remember a nurse saying she's going to pass out. And this other nurse leaned in the car. I was still in the front seat, and the other nurse leaned in and she got like super close to my face. She leaned in that car, and I will never forget her eyes. And she like yelled in my face, and she was like, "You did a great job." And and I was like,
did you need that, or was she just doing that to try and keep you awake?
I think she was trying to get, I owe a lot to her, because I think she like brought me back to life. Like she kind of brought me back down to moment. Earth. Yes. Yeah. So she was just trying to talk to me. And that's all I remember her saying. I went and spoke with her later. I went and met everybody, because I didn't get to meet. And she was like, I was just talking to you and telling you how I was running as fast as I could. And she said she went running in for the crash cart, and she was like trying to get directions and running, didn't know what was going on. And she was the one that brought the crash cart out. And yeah, she was amazing. Her, and then the guy that gave my son like breaths of air and compressions and got him breathing. They were amazing. And then all these people were outside, and the first person I see is like the charge nurse. And I happen to like teach her son, or like work with her son at the school that I used to work with. Like her son was like in like one of the a student that I would work with. We were in like run club together. And I was like, oh great. Like I know this person, and here I am, just
there's poop all over the car. There's
blood everywhere.
Like,
Cause I'm a pretty modest person. Like I don't want people in the delivery room with me. Like I think it's pretty intimate. Like I want it to be me and my husband, and that's it. And so here I am, like on outside in a car, there's people like watching from the windows, people taking pictures, and the road is right there. And there's like 30, 40 people outside, just came pouring outside.
Yeah.
Pediatricians and OBs and nurses. And it was, everybody was hands on deck. And I'm just sitting, and the first person I see is this person I know. And I'm like, oh, well, here's everything, just hanging out. So, but they got me all cleaned up and wheeled me in, and I ended up delivering the placenta inside. I didn't get to deliver placenta outside, which is fine, but I had to still pay for a partial delivery. So I know a lot of people always ask me, like, people ask me like, oh, so was your delivery bill a lot cheaper since you had the baby, like, and not in the hospital? It was a little cheaper, I guess.
Give you a little discount,
a little discount, because I didn't use like obviously any of their equipment, but I was charged like emergency room fee, a labor and delivery. Emergency room, a labor and delivery, and then like room and board. And I was like, excuse me, I did not use your delivery room. I was in my car. And they were like, no, technically you did. You delivered the placenta inside, so it's a partial delivery. I was like, oh, okay. So if you're going to have a baby,
give me a break. Come on.
If you're going to have a baby in the car or out somewhere else on your way to the hospital, go ahead and finish the delivery.
Make sure you deliver the placenta out there for those listening. If you're ever in that situation, got it. Thanks, Tess.
If you're in my shoes, just go ahead and finish. Like, wait a second. Just can we have 5 more minutes, please? So, once he was 9 pounds, 6 ounces, 21 and a half inches long. Like,
and so what was that in comparison to Juliet?
So Juliet was 7 pounds, 11 ounces.
Oh my. Okay.
Yes.
So that's quite a difference.
Yeah. Oh yes. I had a giant baby.
Yeah.
And giant baby. I had like 10 stitches with my first, and no stitches with my second.
Wow.
So but I guess my OB told me, like, when you're pushing really hard, it can like tear. You can tear more if you're pushing really, really hard.
Yeah.
And here, this one, I didn't push at all.
Yeah. He just came on out.
He just came on out. Yeah. So recovery was great. I was sitting like Indian style, like in my room, like a couple hours later, just hanging out.
Nice.
I mean, I wasn't jittery or shaky from, epidurals or anything like that. I mean, I had no IVs, no nothing.
Yeah.
So I did feel really good. So I'd
Yeah.
imagine had I known my delivery was going to be like that and I could have mentally prepared for a natural delivery,
Yeah.
the recovery was great, much
Yeah.
better than when I was on epidurals and doing all
And
that
pushing
stuff.
for 2 hours
And pushing
all
for
of
2 hours.
that.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
mean, I felt like I was in a car accident after my first,
Yeah.
but this one was a breeze. It was just great. My husband's like, "You're doing amazing." So I was
Yeah.
like, yeah.
So tell me, I want to go back to James and ask, how was he, like, did he have to go to NICU at all? Or
Mm-mm.
once they got him breathing, was he
He was totally
okay?
fine. So
Okay,
yeah,
good.
once they got him breathing, he was good to go. But yeah, it took a little bit. It felt like forever.
Yeah, of course.
Watching it and being there and like, and again, I'm sure like if I was in a hospital and that happened, the doctors are a little bit more calm and like I'm a little
Yeah.
bit, like about the situation. Cause I'm sure that stuff happens all the time. Just the cord was around. I remember the nurse taking the cord around his neck and like,
well, it does not happen like that all the time. Let's be clear. Babies do come out and need some resuscitation, 10% of the time, 20%
okay.
of the time, something like that. But no, it does not happen like that very often. Where it's like true emergency.
Yeah, that's what I'm like, because I'm trying to think like maybe it wouldn't be like this if I was in hospital. So I don't know.
Yeah.
Between the cord being around his neck and then I'm sure just being his head just being out for a couple minutes, just being clamped with my vagina just around him. I don't know if that could have caused.
It certainly can. That's called a shoulder dystocia. So they get, their head kind of gets stuck and it takes a little while longer for their body to be delivered. And it's not even that it's your vagina around their neck. It's that their umbilical cord is in a place where it gets really squished kind of against their body, like in your birth canal right there.
Okay.
So that's why, they can be dangerous if the head is sitting out for a few minutes and the body's like not
coming out yet. Yeah. And I'm sure had I been being coached through it and like, if I was actually pushing, I probably could have gotten him out a lot faster. Like he wouldn't have.
Well, and you weren't,
and I was sitting
in a car.
Right.
Yeah,
I was
and
sitting.
there's like something underneath you. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Cause I was just leaned up on the console and just, hey, just as about as laid down as I could get.
Right.
But he did finally come out. He came out and like, whew, after that, when they told me to push that second time, I don't remember pushing. Maybe I did. He just came out, but no, he was fine. I mean, he pinked right up and started crying. And I remember the nurse was like, let her hold him. And so I have an awesome picture of me holding him for the first time. And my husband like took a picture, which is crazy that he was calm enough to take a picture because he was running around like crazy. But apparently another security guard told him, she was like, "You're going to want to take a picture." She's like, "Grab a picture." And I'm so glad she told him to do that because I have this awesome picture. You can't see my face. It's just the back of us. And you see these like hands, like reaching in, like these, the EMS hands, like reaching in, and I'm holding my son for the first time in like a towel that we brought.
Yeah.
It's a great picture that we have.
Well, if you don't mind sending it, we'll put it up on your
I will
page for people to take a look at it.
I will. And it's a picture I cherish.
So tell me, okay, you said your recovery was great with him. So now getting pregnant for the third time, or I guess for the fourth, with third baby.
Third baby.
Tell me how that pregnancy was and how your mentality was knowing this happened the second time. I want to try and avoid it.
Yeah.
At all humanly possible. Like
at all costs.
Yeah. So tell me, now getting pregnant for a third time, were you terrified?
Yes. So I felt really good. So I knew pretty quickly, like a couple of months after I had my son, I wanted to get pregnant a third time. Like I was like, I want to do this again. My husband, absolutely not. He was completely traumatized, completely tore up about it. Did not want to, no, like he'll still like get teared up and choked up talking about my son's delivery. He has a really hard time.
Sure. Yeah.
So he was like, no, we're done. We have a boy and a girl. We're done. I wanted to have a third. So I was trying to convince him. And then, we just got pregnant. I know people think that I got pregnant on purpose. I did not. It just happened.
Yeah.
So I got pregnant a third time, and, pregnancy I was fine in the beginning. The whole pregnancy, I was fine. I was like, we'll be fine. We'll make it. I told the doctors at the beginning, like, hey, can we schedule an induction? Like, can we and they were totally on board with it. So that's when I
Good.
found out it was called a precipitous delivery, which I didn't know it actually had a name.
Super precipitous delivery.
Yeah, precipitous delivery.
Yeah.
They said anything under 3 hours is considered precipitous delivery. And I had my son in 12 minutes. My water broke. Yeah. So it was 12 minutes because I got in the car. I got in the car immediately after my water broke.
Yeah.
And I was on the phone with my doctor. So right when I got in the car, so I knew the time roughly. And then so the nurses had to kind of guess when he was born. So when she got the call on the phone is when she said that he was delivered. So it was roughly 12 minutes. So unreal. So with this one, I felt really good. I was like, okay, I'll get induced at 39 weeks. This is going to be great. This is where my pregnancy, I was in pain pretty much the whole time. I was sick till about 16 weeks. Never had that before.
Yeah.
I started having horrible pelvic pain. I had at the end of my pregnancy with my son, started having it around 22 weeks with my daughter, my daughter. That just got worse and worse and worse. And I'm assuming I had that pelvic symphysis disorder or symphysis pubic disorder, whatever it's called. It was excruciating pain and got worse and worse and worse each week. So this whole pregnancy, I joked that my daughter was making sure she was the baby of the family. Like she's making sure.
Yeah, sounds like pregnancy, you went out with a bang.
I went out with a bang.
Yeah.
So was pretty miserable. And then when it got to around, let's say 34 weeks, that's when anxiety started really, really hitting me bad about delivering. Cause now I'm not teaching anymore. I'm a stay-at-home mom.
Yeah.
So I'm home with my kids full time, my other two. And so my daughter is 3.5 and my son is 2, just turned 2. So I'm like, oh my God, like what if I deliver this baby at home by myself or
totally
with my children here?
Yeah.
Like the trauma it's going to cause them, let alone me. I was so worried about them. Traumatized.
Yeah.
It was terrifying. And I remember talking to my OB and she was amazing. She sat down beside me and she touched my hand and she was like, listen, what you went through with your second pregnancy, she's like, that is a trauma. She's like, you had a traumatic delivery. And she's like, any pregnancy that doesn't go according to your plan, can be traumatizing. She was which is totally understandable. She's like, everything you're feeling is totally understandable. And I was hoping that they'd induce me even earlier than 39 weeks, which I know they can't. I had a healthy pregnancy, so I knew they weren't going to, but I was like, maybe this baby will be really big too. And they'll have to get him out, get her out even earlier or something something to get me in that hospital. So I was really scared. Each week that went by, I was in more pain because of my pelvic and issues. And I don't know if that contributed, just being in chronic pain like that. It just reminded me of okay, everything's super loose down there. So this baby's just going to fly out. She's just going to pop out. And I had to go to chiropractor and all this stuff to get help with that. But I made it. I had a scare at 37 weeks. At 37 weeks, I started having contractions and I started timing them immediately. And it was and it was in the front. It wasn't in my back. It was all in the front. And I was like, oh my, and they were, they were 3 minutes apart. They started 3 minutes apart and consistently on the money.
So did you go immediately?
Yes.
To the hospital. Okay.
So yes. So I timed them for 15 minutes and 15 minutes. And my sister happened to FaceTime me and she saw my face and she was like, what's wrong with you? And I was like, I'm having contractions, legit contractions. They're 3 minutes apart. I said, I don't know what to do. My husband is a cyclist and happened to be on a bike ride. And so I was home alone. It was just I was home alone with my kids and I'm like, this is it. This is the scenario that I've been dreading. And here I'm starting at 3 minutes apart. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God. So I called my sister's like, I'm going to call mom. My sister's in Charlotte, by the way. She's like, I'm going to call mom and tell her. My mom's in, up the road, 30 minutes away from me.
Okay.
And so she's like, I'm going to call mom for you. She's like, you get on the phone with your doctor. And I was like, okay. So I called my doctor and the nurse was like, yes, ma'am, you need to go to the hospital right now. You need to go, usually we say 5 minutes apart is our thing. She's like, if you're at 3, you need to go right now. Yeah. She's like, get your kids in the car. And I was like, okay. So I called my husband. I texted my husband because he's on a bike ride.
Yeah.
And I said, I need you to come home. I'm having contractions.
Drive your bike to the hospital. Just turn around.
Cycle your bike. Meet me there. So I said, don't panic. Because I'm trying to keep him calm because again, he's outside like cycling. So I'm like, don't panic. I'm having contractions. I need you to start heading home.
Yeah.
Well, he was like far away.
Uh-oh.
Turns out he stopped somebody in a truck and threw his bike in the guy's truck and was like, can you please drive me? My wife's having contractions. I need to get home. So he actually got home pretty quick. So we got in the car and he got home, 10 minutes after I texted him, which wasn't too bad. And my mom met me at the hospital to get the kids, my big kids. And we got in there and sure enough, they stayed like 5 minutes apart in the hospital. Consistently. And so they ended up admitting me and I was 2 centimeters when I got in there and they ended up admitting me to labor and delivery. And I felt so calm because I made it to the hospital.
Yeah. You were like, okay,
I made it.
I made it. Yeah.
I'm 37 weeks. I'm a little bit early, but you know what? I made it. And it's going to be fine. So, and then I've got to labor and delivery and they put an IV in, they got everything ready to go. And, contractions stopped at like 1:00 in the morning. Everything completely stopped. So the doctor was like, I could have sworn you were in early labor and like, he was like, I thought we'd be doing an epidural, like and getting going. He was like, but you can go home. So then anxiety kicked in.
Oh, I'm sure. I was going to say, you probably were like, oh God.
Yeah. Even worse. Even worse because now I'm like, my body obviously is trying to get this baby out and you're sending me home. Like who leaves labor and delivery? Like how many people get admitted to labor and delivery?
Not many.
And walk out? Right.
Yes, you're like 0.1% of all of these statistics here.
Yeah. So I was like, I said, what am I supposed to do? I said, I don't know what to do because if this happens again, how do I know if it's false labor or not? Right. And he's like, you're not going to know. He was like, you're just going to have to keep coming back in. And he was like, I'm probably going to see you later this week. And I was like, oh, great. Awesome. So I have 2 little ones. My husband has to work and I'm sitting here like, what? Great. I just have to go to the hospital anytime I start feeling these contractions. And he was like, yep, yes, you do. And I was like, great. Luckily I didn't have any more of those like false labor, but I was just an anxious, anxiety riddled mess.
Yeah. You're like, sit like,
yes,
move,
like don't.
Yeah.
I was like, not only am I in pain, the pain's worse. I was like, I'm just going to put myself on bed rest. I'm going to put myself on bed rest. I'm done. Like, I'm done. So we didn't do as much. Normally I'm like out going all these different places with my kids. We go to the museums and parks and, I'm on the go with them all the time. So the last couple of weeks we were pretty stagnant, lots of Disney. We watched lots of movies and just hung out, but I made it to 39 weeks and, got induced, started Pitocin. I didn't have to do the bulb, the Foley bulb. I didn't have to do that because I was already 3 centimeters. And then I started Pitocin right away, which I was nervous about because I've heard like horror stories about labor. Even my OB told me, she was like, labor's pretty rough with Pitocin. She was like, it's a bit more painful than just if they went ahead and broke your water. But they started with Pitocin. I didn't feel anything. I felt some contractions, but I felt some contractions, but nothing terrible at all. Cause they, I was like ready for an epidural because I was all about an epidural this time because I was so traumatized. I was like, I said, if you can promise me another quick delivery, I'll do it natural. And they were like, well, we can't. And I was like, well, then I'm going to get an epidural because I can't. It's going to bring back too much drama. It's going to bring back too much stress. Like I cannot go through that again.
Yeah.
And so I was like waiting all day, like for the pain to really kick in. And it never did. I never got above like a 4 or 5 on the scale, like for pain. And I was like, I'm okay. And the nurse came in around like 4 and she was like, I'm afraid that you don't know that you're in labor. She was like, I'm afraid that your body is not registering kind of with your second, that you don't really know like that you're in labor. Yeah. And, or like, you can't really feel, your body's not really doing it or at least you can't feel it. And I was like, okay. And I was like, so what do I do? She was like, I want the doctor to check you. Cause I hadn't been checked all day. When I went in at 3 and it's 4 o'clock, I went in at 6 a.m. and the doctor never came back in to check me till like 4 or 5. she was like, I'm going to have the doctor come in and check you. And let's go ahead and get him to break your water, and let's get an epidural if you want one. And let's go ahead and break your water and get going. She was like, cause I bet you're close. So when he came in, I was still only 5 centimeters.
Okay.
But but
that's
I
still more than what you were.
Right. But I got up to 5, and, I had to get an epidural, but I wasn't in any pain. Which that was, I think, the hardest part. With my daughter, I got an epidural and I was in excruciating pain, couldn't open my eyes, couldn't talk, couldn't do anything.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel that epidural at all. Didn't feel a thing. Going in, nothing. I was just like, give me something to help me. And then with this one, I was in 0 pain, and here having to get this epidural. And so I could feel everything. And I was very, very nervous. I probably about broke my husband's hands because I was just like so anxious. But once I got the epidural, and it's not like the epidural was painful getting it. It was more of just uncomfortable feeling. It was a very weird feeling. And he was like, you're going to feel a zing. And I felt a zing in my leg when he said it. And so he walked me through everything, which was fine. It was just uncomfortable. So about an hour after I got my epidural, and they broke my water right after that. And about an hour later, she was like, okay, it's time to push. I was like, so it happened quick. And I started pushing. My first push, they were like, oh, we can see your head. And I was like, no, you can't. Like, there's no way. I pushed for 2 hours with my daughter. There's no way you can see her head. And they're like, yes, we can. Yes, we can. And I was like, no. And so I remember my sister and my cousin had just had a baby like 6 weeks ago. And she said, her OB said, push the baby up to the sky, push your baby to the sky. And so she said that and I was like, what does that mean? She was like, push and kind of lift your hips up. If you can lift your hips up, try to push. Cause I didn't want to push for 2 hours. So I remembered that. And so my second contraction that came through, I pushed and kind of was able to like lift my hips up, and she came out. She just came out. So I pushed for literally 1 minute. If I started pushing at 5:22 and she was born at 5:23.
Wow.
So yeah. So if anybody listening, when they say like push, like try to lift your hips up, like push.
Yeah, you're almost, I almost describe it. I say that too. Push, think you're pushing up to the sky, but almost you're like cupping, like going underneath.
Yeah.
If that makes sense. Like you're like push, like think about your baby coming underneath your pelvic bone and like going up.
Push up. Yeah. You kind of like push up.
Yep.
So, my sister was a cheerleader, and she said, pinch a penny. If any cheerleaders out there, like pinch a penny, like push with like your butt, like squeeze your butt cheeks together and push up.
Yeah.
And so, so I did that, and it worked. I was like, man, like I get it. So she just shot right out too. So it was great. And she just came out pink, beautiful, crying, and
yay,
plopped her on my chest. And it was great. It was great. So the induction was amazing. It was great. I mean, I didn't have to, once I got there, all the anxiety and stress kind of wore off, and I just hung out with my husband, and it was just the two of us hanging out, chit chatting. It was fun. It was like almost a little weird date that we had.
Yeah. No. And no kids there.
Right. Some alone time with just us. So we just hung out. It was great. And then, the hardest part was I wasn't able to eat anything, while I was there. So I told my husband, what to order me after the baby was born. I went ahead and picked out my food. Nice. And so when I was doing the hour of like skin to skin, I was definitely eating like mac and cheese and a hamburger, like over her head.
That's okay. Yeah. Great.
I was like third kid, like whatever, I'm starving.
Yeah. That's a great meal to have after you have a baby too. It sounds delicious.
I need some carbs in here, and I'm starving. So there's definitely pictures of me like chomping down on food over her head.
Nice. I remember what I ate after both of I remember that moment. I had a big chocolate chip cookie after my first one. And then with Ryland, Tiffany actually came in and she brought in some Bojangles, and I had like Bojangles. So you remember like, I was like, it was like, so good.
Monumental. Like, oh God, like the best food I've ever had in my life is hospital hamburger. Like, yes. But it was great. Yeah, it was great.
It. That's amazing. So before we wrap up, how did you feel after that third one? Did you feel like that third birth healed any of the trauma from your second one?
I would say yes and no. I mean, I feel like now that it's over, I know it's like everything's like, okay, like everything will be okay. Everything will be fine. Like if I did get pregnant a fourth time, like I can make it. We're not planning on having any more, but I mean, everything is fine. But then I also still feel this, like, anytime I drive past the hospital that I delivered my son at, anytime I'm on that street where, where his head started coming out, like, I have all these like memories that come back, and, you know, I can feel that anxiety, coming in. But I mean, I think overall, like, knowing that, like, medical professionals are there, and that there is, like, you can make it, you will be okay. Like, so it's like, I feel okay. Now, if I got pregnant again, I wonder if it would come back. But maybe not as bad, since I did make it the third time, to the hospital. I don't know. I guess we'll never know, because I'm not planning on having another one. We'll never know. I felt fine when I got pregnant. When I got pregnant initially with my third, I didn't realize how much anxiety I was going to have until the very end, when things were getting real. But I don't know. We'll never know, really.
Yeah. Cool. Well, Tess, thank you so much for sharing all of this. This was
You're
like
welcome.
amazing, just to hear all three, and then that second one in so much detail.
Yeah.
I know I've heard, from Tara, from Tiffany, and from you. I've talked to you at parties and stuff, get-togethers, like you said, not parties anymore, but
birthday parties
for kids,
for
right?
kids.
I've heard, kind of like how it went, but I've never really heard it in this much detail. So thank you for sitting down with me and talking.
You're welcome.
This was amazing.
You're welcome.
Do you mind sharing, before we wrap up, how your breastfeeding journeys were with each? Sometimes people just have questions about breastfeeding.
Yeah, absolutely. So, with my first, I obviously didn't know what I was doing. I saw lactation, consultants in the hospital. And you don't really know how much the baby's getting. And they just kept telling me that whatever your body's making is enough for the baby. My daughter was inconsolable. And they told me, like, don't pump, don't give pacifiers, don't do all this stuff. They were really strict lactation consultant ladies. And I was like, okay. And I remember she lost 10% of her body weight in the hospital. And I remember the doctor saying, we normally don't send babies home at 10%, but your baby she'll be fine. You just keep nursing. Okay. Well, she was inconsolable, crying, horrible. And I realized when I got her home, like a couple days, or, next day, she hadn't peed in 24 hours. So I remember them telling me that, like, oh God. So I realized I'm not producing anything, but she's not getting anything. And sure enough, when I hooked up to the pump, I had like nothing coming out. So I had to supplement with formula, which saw a bunch of different lactation people trying to get my supply up and running. It just never really came in. I would spend like all day pumping and nursing. And I wasn't really enjoying my maternity leave. And so I finally just stopped at 6 weeks. I was like, I'm killing myself. And like, I can't do this. Because it never really, my milk never came in. Like, it just never came in. I'd get maybe an ounce like all day. Like if I was trying to pump and collect, I would take like an ounce all day. And I tried the teas, I tried the pills, I tried baking cookies. It was crazy. My son, I thought, okay, well, maybe my body will kind of know what to do and it'll like kick in. No, maybe I made a little bit more with him. But he was such a giant baby. Remember, he was 9 pounds, 6 ounces. So he came out and was eating like a monster. And I tried to nurse and keep up with him. I wasn't able to produce enough for him, and his latch was terrible. I would have like this horrible pain all through my chest and have to take like pain medicine to get it to go away, like horrible pain. And so I stopped with him around 5 or 6 weeks, kind of the same as my daughter. And I was like, I'm done. And I didn't feel nearly as guilty the second time, because the first time I was guilt ridden. Like they make you feel like people make you feel like you have to nurse. Like this is the healthiest thing. Even on the back of the formula bottle, the box, it says breast milk is better. And I'm like,
and there's a disclaimer. Yeah.
And I'm like, well, guess what? My babies are going to be formula. I just turned that label the other way around, so I don't have to see it.
There you go.
And then this one, I made sure, I was like, I'm going to make sure I do a solid, at least an hour skin to skin right when she comes out. I latched her immediately. She latched on like immediately. And I was like, I'm going to try to get this. I'm going to try again. And my milk supply has been better. I was just pumping when we started this. It's been better. And my daughter, she latches great. Before I was like, with my daughter, especially, I was all scabbed over and it was just horrible latching. It's just a mess. This one she's been great. I'm still not producing enough to satisfy her. So I usually try to nurse. I'll pump first to try to get things going for her. And then I'll latch her. And then she always needs a bottle afterwards.
Yeah.
I mean, but it is what it is. But it is nice. Like I'll nurse her in the middle of the night, and so I don't have to pump in the middle of the night. And so I do try to pump in between sessions, or if I'm like, just don't feel like it, I'm just going to pump.
Who cares?
Like whatever.
It's fine.
I'm going to make a bottle for my husband. My husband can feed her, and it's really great. So this one I've completely embraced. It is what it is. And
no expectations.
Nothing.
We're just going with the flow. Yeah.
I'm going to nurse her when I feel like nursing her. I'm going to pump when I feel like pumping. And I feel like maybe that's what's helped my milk supply pick up a little bit, because I'm not nearly as stressed out. And I'm like, I'm not timing things. How long did she nurse on my left? How long did she nurse on my right? How long did I pump for? I'm not recording anything. I'm not keeping track of anything. It just is what it is. And so she's just getting both, and she's thriving and doing great. So
that's awesome.
Whatever.
You sound like a very like third time mom.
Yeah.
Or fourth, experience.
Yeah.
That's an experienced mom talking.
Yep. Forget it. Like, forget it. There's nothing. My children are beautiful and healthy and smart and funny, and formula's great and is a lifesaver. So I remember the best thing the doctor told me. She said, with my son, when I told her I was having issues, she said, listen, she was like, what you're going through right now, not producing enough milk or latching issues. She was like, this is not a new problem. She was like, this has been happening to women for all of time. She said, wet nurses were there for a reason, for women that couldn't produce milk. And so she was like, what people would take their babies to wet nurses to go to feed their babies. She was like, you would have needed a wet nurse. And I was like, you're right. Like, this isn't rare. This isn't abnormal. Like, this just is what it is. It's not because I'm not eating enough, or I'm not drinking enough water, or I'm not lashing them enough, or it's like, this just is. So it was the best advice. It was the best thing she said to calm me down. So this one I went in, I was like, whatever. Cool. I'm just going to do what I can.
I love it. And how many weeks postpartum are you now?
3 weeks.
3 weeks.
3 weeks postpartum. Yeah.
Woohoo.
Feeling pretty good.
Nice and fresh. Love it.
Yeah.
Well, Tess, thank you so much for joining me today. This was amazing.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
All right, guys, that wraps up this week's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in and letting me be a part of your motherhood journey. It is truly an honor. If you like what you heard, don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. And I love hearing what you guys think of the podcast. So if you're liking what you hear, or you have a suggestion, I'd be so grateful if you'd go ahead and leave me a review wherever you're listening to help more mamas just like you find the show. What do you think? Are you starting to feel a little more confident about your pregnancy and birth? Well, if you want more, be sure to head on over to mommylabornurse.com/podcast for today's show notes and a library of episodes so you can keep getting educated before your upcoming birth. And while you're over there, be sure to check out the blog and learn about our online birth classes. Find it all and more over at mommylabornurse.com/podcast. See you next week, same time, same place.